seat. Catherine, would you pass me my Bible? That's definitely going to be helpful in the next few minutes. Sorry. I'd forget my head if it wasn't on. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome if you're joining us on live stream. My name is Andy. Glad you're all here and glad you're with us too on live stream. Have you ever tried to stand up in the middle of a fast-flowing river? I gave it a go. About 10 years ago, we went on a summer holiday in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. There's a beautiful river that flows through Steamboat Springs called the Yampa River. And my family wanted to, the adventurous types of my family, they wanted to go tubing. Now, tubing, it's a bit like having a rubber dinghy, only bigger. Okay, so the tubes are out of big lorry wheels. It's their inner tubes, and you get them blown up as much as you can get them, as tight as you can get them, and then you essentially go on one of these fast-flowing rivers and just float along. Anyway, so we arrived on the day to go tubing. Got into the water, and already where we're getting in, you can just tell that there's this flow of this current. You're like, okay, I think I can deal with that. Yeah, I can swim a bit. Should be okay. It looks okay. And then my lad goes to me, Dad, I got an idea. It's like, that's always dangerous. My 14-year-old at the time, he goes, Dad, let's go on our front, head first, like Superman. No, this doesn't sound like a clever idea, but I'll go on then. He easily twisted my arm. So there we are, getting on our tubes on the river, Superman. Or giving it a go. If there's any children in the room, do not try this, ever. Just don't do it. Anyway, so there we are, and no sooner are you on your tube, you're on your way. It's okay, at the start, it's like, I've got this. This is good, looking around, it's a beautiful blue sky day, just a beautiful Colorado day, and we're in the middle of the river having a nice little chat. And then we're heading down, and we're picking up a bit. I'm like, this is getting a bit quick now. All of a sudden, I'm aware of my surroundings. This is getting a bit quick. And then up ahead, I'm like, Jake, is that white water? He's like, yeah, Dad, it's going to be great. I'm like, I'm not sure that this is going to be great. Anyway, so we're heading down and head towards it, and sure enough, when we hit the white water, boom, I was straight off my tube, flailing around in the water, didn't know what I was doing, didn't know where Jake was, didn't know where anybody was. I was just trying to survive. And what I hadn't realized was, this Yampa River is actually quite shallow. It was only about 3 foot deep. Now, I know I'm not much taller than that, admittedly, get it. But I'm like, I can get back to my feet, so I tried to get back on my feet, and as I'm getting back on my feet, I can't get back on my feet. The power of the current is just too much. I couldn't get back onto my feet. And eventually, as I'm flailing around, there was this huge rock ahead of me, thought plan. Because, survival kicks in, doesn't it? Maybe you've never tried it. Trust me, it will kick in. Survival kicked in, and I grabbed hold of this rock, and I just stayed clinging to that rock while the river is rushing by me. Let's leave that story there, and we'll come back to it later on. We started a new series, as Catherine mentioned earlier, Standing Strong. This is week 2, and we're looking at what it means to live in a culture that's actually, as we heard last week, a lot like that Yampa River. It's fast-flowing and just coming at us. Fast-flowing culture. That's where we live. Sometimes it takes us off our feet. It has the potential to sweep us away, actually. Every one of us has that potential in our lives. So how do we stand strong in the world today? Pastor Johnny, the first Sunday of this year, if you've not heard the message title was The Flow of Culture. And he focused in on a little phrase in the book of Daniel. It's this phrase in Daniel chapter 11, verse 32. The people who know their God shall stand firm and take action. And that, if you like, that's our overarching phrase for the year. for your life, for my life. The people who know their God will stand firm and take action. So we're looking into the book of Daniel in this series to gain insight from someone who found himself in his own version of a fast-flowing culture. Found himself in a place that didn't know, contrary to everything that he believed and everything that he stood for. Yet somehow he was able to stand strong. So week 2, if you want a title for this message today, the title is A Matter of What Matters. A matter of what matters. Daniel chapter 1 and verse 2 is my anchoring text, if you like, for this message. It says this, and the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into Nebuchadnezzar's hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. In the book of Ezra, it's actually recorded the items that were taken from the temple of God. There was 5,400 articles of gold and silver. So Nebuchadnezzar takes them from the temple of God, from the place of worship for God's people. He takes them and he puts them in the treasury of his God. Tiny little verse at the start of the book, but not insignificant. You see, these articles, they represented something of the worship of God. They were sacred articles only used in the worship of God. And he takes them and puts them in a treasury with everything else that he's built up over years and years and years. All the stuff he's accumulated and puts them into his treasury. But those very vessels, those very articles were the link to the God of Daniel. They were the link to what it means to worship God. So right here at the start of Daniel, there's immediately this huge message that worship matters.
Amen.
If it's a matter of what matters, worship matters. Nebuchadnezzar had no issue with worship, actually. As we'll find out over coming weeks, he was brilliant at it. He was really good at worship. The issue was, what or who he was worshipping. But we don't get off the hook, because it's the same for us, isn't it? Same for us today. What or who are we worshipping? There can be all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be all bad things. But there's so much coming at us in this fast-flowing culture. What are we grasping hold of? What are we taking hold of that we don't realize we're taking hold of? That's taking our trust or taking our devotion. If you like, what's in our worthy pile? It could be good things. It could be your career. It could be your job. It could be your house. It could be your family. It could be your relationships. They're not bad things, but are they top of your worthy pile? Are they top of mine? David says this brilliant little phrase in Psalm 145 and verse 3. He says, great is the Lord, and then this, and most worthy of praise. I love that little phrase, most worthy, because it begs a question. It begs the question of me and of you. Who's top of my worthy pile? Who's most worthy right now in my life, in your life? Because as Louise Lee said to us last week, you know, the enemy will do anything he can to keep you from what's most important. Anything he can to keep you from what's most important. In fact, he gave the game away when he tried it with Jesus. Jesus in his most vulnerable spot, potentially, certainly physically, after 40 days of fasting. The enemy comes along, takes him up to a high mountain and tempts him and says, look at all these kingdoms. This is the King of Kings. It's like he's just played his card. He's just given it away. This is the King of Kings he's with. He's like, look, you're on top of a high mountain. Look at all the kingdoms of the world. I'll give you them all. Like he could. I'll give you them all if you will bow down and worship me. And that sums it all up. You talk about flow of culture. It wants our worship.
Amen.
But actually what's most important, who should be most worthy? It's quite simple, really. God. Our worship matters. Isaiah chapter 44, verse 6 to 8 says this, "Thus the Lord, the King of Israel and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts, I am the first and I am the last. Besides me there is no God." It doesn't get any clearer than that. Besides me, there is no God. Who is like me? Let him proclaim it. Let him declare and set it before me. Since I appointed an ancient people, let them declare what is to come and what will happen. Fear not, nor be afraid. Have I not told you from of old and declared it? And you are my witnesses. Is there a God besides me? There is no rock. I know not any. For Isaiah to get this powerful, profound message across, he doesn't stop there. But let me read this to you. We're not going to read this on the screen. Just listen to the folly of idolatry. The very things that you and I fall into. Putting things as more worthy than God in our lives. He puts it like this in verse 9. Isaiah 44. "All who fashion idols are nothing, and the things they delight in do not profit. Their witnesses neither see nor know, that they may be put to shame. Who fashions a god or casts an idol that is profitable for anything? Behold, all his companions shall be put to shame, and the craftsmen are only human after all. Let them all assemble, let them stand forth. They shall be terrified, they shall be put to shame together." And listen to all this work that they do. "The ironsmith takes a cutting tool and works it over with the coals. He fashions it with hammers and works it with his strong arm. He becomes hungry and his strength fails." Don't sound good, does it really? This idolatry thing. "He drinks no water and he's faint. The carpenter stretches out a line. He marks it with a pencil. He shapes it with planes and marks it with a compass. He shapes it into the figure of a man, with the beauty of a man to dwell in the house. He cuts down cedars, or he chooses a cypress tree or an oak and lets it grow strong among the trees of the forest. He plants a cedar and the rain nourishes." This seems like an awful lot of work to me. "Then it becomes fuel for a man. He takes a part of it and warms himself. He kindles a fire and bakes bread." That's interesting. Comfort. Issues of comfort. "Also, he makes a god and worships it. He makes it an idol and falls down before..." How far are we going to go? Seriously. "He makes it an idol and falls down before it and worships it. He prays to it and says," this is a block of wood for goodness sake, "Deliver me. Deliver me, for you are my God. Deliver me." It's not even going to talk to him. It's not even Alexa. Although please don't make that your God, because you are going to come unstuck, trust me. "They know not, nor do they discern, for he has shut their eyes so that they cannot see, and their hearts so that they cannot understand. No one considers, nor is there knowledge or discernment to say, half of it I burned in the fire. I also baked bread on its coals. I roasted meat and I've eaten. And shall I make the rest of it an abomination? Shall I fall down before a block of wood? He feeds on ashes. A deluded heart has led him astray, and he cannot deliver himself or say, is there not a lie in my right hand?" Idolatry. What is an idol? Tim Keller said it like this: it's anything that absorbs your heart and mind and imagination more than God. Anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God. Anything you seek to give you what only God can give. This passage I just read tells us a few things of what idols do, in case you're wondering about who is most worthy in your life. The first thing is this, in verse 17, idols lure our trust. They do. They make us trust them. He prays to it and says, deliver me, for you are my God, like it could. Yet he's trusting. He's asking something or someone to save him other than the one who is most worthy. There was a songwriter called Jewel. She wrote a song, good title, Who Will Save Your Soul? That's a good question. We all should ask ourselves. However, her answers aren't particularly helpful in the song. It's a song essentially just grasping at anything. Grasp at anything that can provide you or will make you think it's providing for you what you really need. And as one of the lyrics says this, so we pray to as many different gods as there are flowers. C.S. Lewis challenges the issue of lordship in our life like this. He said this in The Weight of Glory. If we consider the unblushing promises of reward and the staggering nature of the rewards promised in the Gospels, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We're half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he can't imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. What do mud pies look like in your life? What do they look like in mine? Just things. Yeah, I'm being offered the equivalent of a holiday by the sea, the unblemished promises of the Gospels, life, and more life. Idols lure our trust. Idols demand devotion. We read it. You heard me read it. Read it. That whole passage, everything that they're carving and making, that they've devoted their lives to making something, to giving them something that it won't be able to give them. Reminds me of the words of Joshua when he spoke to the children of Israel and said, choose you this day who you'll serve. Like that's a challenge to every one of us because this culture just keeps on coming at us with everything it's got to offer. Who will you serve? Bob Dylan got it right, actually, in a song he wrote a long time ago. Some people would say he was a modern-day prophet. He said in a song, you got to serve somebody. And actually, he's absolutely right. Because you were made to worship, and so was I. And that's why we worship. And just like Nebuchadnezzar, it's a simple question. Who's got our attention? Who's got our devotion? Who's actually at the top of our worthy pile? Because our devotion will become our reality. Jesus said it like this, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. There's no getting away from it. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I don't know about you, but do you ever have those times in your life, maybe even today, where you're just restless? You don't know why you're restless, but you're just restless. There's something about life that's leaving you uneasy, leaving you in this restless state. Well, maybe do this. Do a worthy pile check. Seriously. Because we can just get caught up on it without realizing it. We can just get caught up in this fast-flowing culture of ours, and all of a sudden we're being swept away without even realizing it. Do a worthy pile check. Check who is most worthy. Who am I thinking about the most? What's absorbing my heart and my mind most? There's a good chance that's the top of your worthy pile, and it'll just drain you if it's not God. That's why Jesus said, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. And what did he say? I will give you rest. There's only one place you're going to find rest. And I'm sorry, it's not in the holiday that you've booked. It's really not. If you're hanging on till July to go on holiday, Oh, I'll make it through to July. I'll just keep busting it out. And then you go on holiday. No. It might tickle the surface a little bit for you, but you'll get home and get back to work and you'll just be in the same restless state. Or maybe a weekend away, bank holiday weekend in May. Whatever you've booked, those things won't bring us rest. The only one who can bring us rest is God. If he's top of our most worthy pile, no matter what you're walking, no matter what Daniel went on to walk, as we'll come to find out, no matter what you face in life, if God's top of that worthy pile, you'll find rest for your soul. Simply, you'll find rest. You won't understand it. I don't understand it. Trust me, I'm walking in stuff too. You walk in stuff and the sense of peace, what is that about? It's about God. Because when God's in his rightful place, you'll have that sense of peace and rightness, no matter what's coming at you, no matter what's flowing against you. Like, God, you have me. Amen. You have my heart. You have my soul. Worship matters. Idols will bypass your reflection. This is interesting. They cannot know, nor can they discern, for he has shut their eyes so that they cannot see, and their hearts so that they cannot understand. Idols don't want you to reason. An idol's not going to want you to reason. Neil Postman said it well in the title of a book. I've not actually read the book, but when I saw the title of the book, I thought, that's about right for our culture. The title is this: Amusing Ourselves to Death. That's actually about right, because if you know the word amuse, the word amusement, the word muse means to think. The word are means not. To not think. And by not thinking, we're amusing ourselves to death. What is it that amuses me? I'm not really thinking about, just chilling, not thinking. Romans chapter 1, verse 21. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. And then they did this. They exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man. Birds and animals and reptiles. So God gave them up in the futility of their thinking, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever blessed. Worship matters. Finally, an idol deludes my heart. It's a very sad verse at the end of Isaiah 44, verse 20. He feeds on ashes. A deluded heart led him astray, and he cannot deliver himself. Or say, is there not a lie in my hand? Tim Keller again said it like this. If we look to created things to give us the meaning, hope, and happiness that only God himself can give, it will eventually break our hearts. So I don't know how far in you are. I know how far in I was. But these things, they're easy to get caught up in. But eventually they break our hearts. Beethoven, the famous composer, was 57 years old when he died. And some scientists in Illinois were studying strands of his hair, and they found that he'd got 100 times too much lead in his system, which was why he died. 100 times too much lead. They traced it back to a mineral spa near where he lived. He would frequent this mineral spa regularly. Healthy place to go. Just go to the spa, chill out, enjoy myself. It's what he loved to do. The irony was, the very place he thought he was going to for his health killed him. And that's idolatry. It brings us to a point of thinking it's satisfying us when actually it's killing us. Worship matters. Daniel believed that true worship would be held in holiness. In Isaiah 6, it says this: "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, "Woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." It's fair to say that most of society now, the sense of holiness, well, it's just gone. The awe of God has been lost. I sometimes wonder whether we deal with that too, you know. The sense of the fear of God in our own lives, in our gatherings together. You know, Eugene Peterson, just before he died, he said these words: "There's a great market for religious experience in our world. There's little enthusiasm for the patient acquisition of virtue, little inclination to sign up for a long apprenticeship in what earlier generations of Christians called holiness." Christians, that's who we're called to be. A long apprenticeship, what generations that have gone before us have called holiness. And Jesus said to you and me very simply, although not simple to live out, you shall love the Lord your God, you shall worship God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. 1 Peter 1 verse 13, Peter says it like this, very practically, I love this: "Prepare your minds for action. Be sober-minded. Set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy." Daniel kept God first and foremost. First and foremost. Worship matters. And secondly, he understood this: there are sovereign matters. Go back to that verse, Daniel 1 verse 2. It says this, the first part of that verse: "And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God." I was struck by those first four words. And the Lord gave. Hold on a minute. I read in a book by David Helm, he puts it like this: "And the Lord gave," that subtle phrase, quietly anchoring the book of Daniel, provides the point of emphasis that the writer wants to make known to us. He wants us to know that when catastrophe strikes Judah, the king and the kingdom, it was God and not Nebuchadnezzar who was ultimately the one moving the wheel of history to accomplish his eternal ends. And the Lord gave. 4 words which would have comforted those first readers and should be comfort for us today. A sense of comfort to anyone here today that finds themselves waiting for the arrival of God's promises. Anybody here? Yeah. A balm in the midst of disquieted surroundings. And boy, we're in uncomfortable surroundings for the most part. And anyone who feels like everything's lost today. Everything seems lost. And maybe even as far as life is not worth living. God was yet working his purposes out. And the Lord gave. He's working his purposes out in you and in me. Because there are sovereign matters. The Westminster Confession of Faith says it like this: God, the great creator of all things, doth uphold, direct, dispose, and govern all creatures, actions, and things, from the greatest even to the least, by his most wise and holy providence, according to his infallible foreknowledge and the free and immutable counsel of his own will, to the praise of the glory of his wisdom and power, justice, goodness, and mercy. In the midst of sovereign matters, worship matters. Back to my opening story. There I was in the Yampa River, clinging on to this rock, as I felt just wave after wave of powerful river force just flowing over me. And I'm just clinging on for dear life, literally trying to catch my breath. And I clamber on to the top of this rock. I get on top of the rock, just exhausted. And I just watch as the river is flowing past, as I'm on top of this rock. And as I was thinking about this story, it relates to the culture we find ourselves in now. Sometimes, the place we find ourselves in, we've got to climb onto a rock. And we've got to cry out for help.
Yeah. Amen.
Cry out for help to God. Not to anything else. Seriously, don't cry out to anything else. Because nothing else will save you. Nothing and no one can save you other than God. Nothing and no one can save me other than God. The psalmist said it well in Psalm 61. Hear my cry, O God, listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I call to you when my heart is faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the enemy. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. While catching my breath on that rock, I realized there was absolutely no way I was going to stay on my feet if I tried to go in the direction of the flow. Seriously, it was too powerful. If you try and go in the direction of the flow of our culture, you won't stay on your feet. So there I am on top of this rock, having realized that. I'm like, I've got no choice. I'm going to have to go against the flow. And I carefully got down, there's a word, carefully, got down off the rock and started to make my way over to the other side, going against the flow. Just small steps. Don't try and take big steps, man. It'll sweep you off your feet. Just take small ones. And stay true to what matters. Stay true to what really matters. The worship of God. And that incredible reality that we sang about earlier. That God is sovereign. He's sovereign over all. Let's pray together. Father, we come to you, our rock. And I pray today, Father, that we would make you most worthy in our lives. That we would recognize that there is none who can save other than you. None but you, Father. The one who is holy, the one who is sovereign over all. Father, lead us to the rock that is higher than I. Be our refuge, be our strong tower. Help us to stand strong in our world today. To live lives that glorify your name. You are most worthy. Be most worthy in our lives, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.